The House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, House Oversight Committee Chairman, that's James Comer, and the Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Jason Smith. Good to see you all. Jim Jordan, let me start with you. Let's start with your letter to Christopher Wray, and then we'll talk about the contempt.
Yeah, there's an underlying 1023 form, Sean, that was earlier back in 2017. That became the basis for Scott Brady, U.S. Attorney, asking to talk to the confidential human source that produced the 1023 form we have. So we've asked Chris Wray to give us that form. But I think when you step back and look at this week, Sean, the real big takeaway wasn't the chaos in Jamie Comer's committee yesterday, wasn't the fact that Kevin Morris, who was sitting there, purchased $875,000 of Hunter Biden's art, and wasn't even what happened in L.A. today with Hunter Biden pleading not guilty these tax charges. I think the big takeaway is what David Weiss didn't charge Hunter Biden with. He didn't charge him with those tax years 2014, 2015, when he got the income from Burisma. In fact, he let the statute of limitations expire, because it's one thing to have a gun charge in Delaware. That doesn't get you to the White House. Another thing to have tax charges in L.A. That doesn't get you to the White House. But the Burisma tax years do, and that's what's in that 1023 form. That's why they want the earlier one as well, and we've asked the FBI to produce it.
When this became an issue, why wouldn't they automatically have handed you the other 1023 form? In other words, were they hiding it from you? It doesn't seem like they're very cooperative.
Great question. I don't know if they were hiding it from us, but we learned about it when we talked to Scott Brady, the U.S. attorney who Bill Barr charged with filtering all this stuff and getting it out to the appropriate U.S. attorneys for investigation. He found it out finally after 6 months when they should have turned it over to him. He's the one that asked for it. So once we talked to him, we felt we should go pursue and get this. So we're hoping that Chris Wray will turn it over.
All right, let's turn to you, James Comer. Let's talk about yesterday, the antics of Hunter Biden showing up. And let's also explain to people what normal procedure is. If you get a subpoena to appear before Congress, you are deposed. That is behind closed doors. And then if there's a public hearing, that would occur afterward. Is that not standard procedure? And when Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro did not show up, were they not charged with contempt of Congress after a recommendation by the committees?
Yes, that's exactly right. Standard procedure. You get a subpoena, you come for a deposition. You have to also, according to the rules, give 3 days notice for a deposition to make sure that everyone's there and everyone's prepared to ask questions and to answer questions. We've done everything by the book in this investigation to ensure that everything that we accumulate in the form of evidence is accessible and admissible in a court of law, because eventually the Bidens are going to be held accountable in a court of law. Hopefully we'll have this attorney general do their job, but regardless, future attorneys general will be able to use the information that we have obtained in our investigation to hold these people accountable for the crimes that they've committed. So we did everything by the book. Hunter Biden showed up. Ironically, Sean, right when he sat down, Moskowitz from Florida, the Democrat, started saying that Hunter Biden's here. He's here to answer questions. He's here to answer questions. And his time expired. I recognized Marjorie Taylor Greene. She was going to ask him questions. When I recognized Marjorie Taylor Greene, Hunter Biden's eyeballs about popped out, and he jumped up along with Abby Lowell, and they ran out and about knocked over 3 or 4 people on the way out the door.
Let's talk, Jason Smith. Let me ask you, and we'll get an update on what the Ways and Means Committee want to get your take on the contempt of Congress and whether or not you think that the same laws that were applied to Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro will be applied to Hunter Biden. I think them showing up yesterday during the middle of this proceeding they have to have a feeling of confidence that they're not going to be held to the same standard. I don't have any confidence that they're going to be held to the same standard. But as we look at that two-tiered system of justice, my question to you is, why shouldn't Hunter be treated the same way as Bannon and Navarro?
Sean, Hunter should be treated exactly the same way. Whenever Steve Bannon was held in contempt, within 22 days, the Justice Department brought charges against Steve Bannon. When Hunter Biden's held in contempt, let's see if the next 22 days, his father's Justice Department holds him in contempt. It is absolutely a great day for the 2 IRS whistleblowers, Sean, because today they were vindicated, because everything that they told the House Ways and Means Committee and the charges that they thought Hunter Biden should be charged with, in fact, that is why he was in court. all 9 of them. Unfortunately, as Jim said, he should have also been charged with 2014 and 15 tax crimes. But as the whistleblower said, the Justice Department allowed the statute of limitations to run out.
But let me ask you, Congressman Smith, this is important here, because the Burisma years, remember, it was David Weiss in charge, was it not? And David Weiss allowed the statute of limitations to expire. Is that not true? Those were the Burisma holding money years? Okay, if that happened and David Weiss, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't his original plan not to charge Hunter, and then the whistleblowers came forward, and that led to the sweetheart deal that blew up in court because a judge actually read the agreement and said she'd never seen anything like this in her life, and even got the defense to admit they'd never seen anything like it in their lives, and that only led to David Weiss finally having the power that he had at one point said he had and then said he didn't have to go after tax charges in Washington and California?
That's exactly right, Sean. What's interesting is that this sweetheart plea agreement, the original one, came out 2 days before the Ways and Means Committee released the IRS whistleblower testimony. That whistleblower testimony is what blew up that sweetheart deal. If that sweetheart deal wouldn't have blown up, the charges would have never came in California, and this would have all been swept underneath the rug, and the two-tier justice system would have not been seen.
They came awfully close. Jim Jordan. Now the big question is, to me, this is not about Hunter Biden. To me, this is about Joe Biden. Joe Biden that said he never once spoke to his father, his son or brother or anybody for that matter about their foreign business dealings. Joe Biden that had extensive contact with foreign business partners and extensive contact with partners of his own son regarding financial matters. Then it comes to the implication of his own son on his own laptop in communications about monies going to his father. At that point, are we talking about, what are we talking about here? If a vice president leverages $1 billion to get a prosecutor fired after 5 days having a phone call with Burisma executives and his son gets paid millions for doing nothing with no experience at a time he's a drug addict, what do you call that?
You call it bribery, and what you just described, Sean, is the facts and circumstances that took place when Joe Biden went to Ukraine and conditioned the release of American tax dollar aid to Ukraine on the firing of the prosecutor who was applying the pressure to Burisma. All that is corroborated by the confidential human source. He said the confidential human source told the FBI that the head of Burisma said, we hired Hunter Biden to protect us through his dad. That is in the prosecutor who they got fired. He conditioned the release of the money on firing this prosecutor. His name is Victor Shokin. He's mentioned 8 times in that 1023 form. We're asking now for the earlier 1023 form so we can put that information together with this as well. That to me is really the heart of this matter. And then you have all this other evidence that Jamie and Jason have brought forward from their committees that support that. But the most corroborating evidence we have is that 1023 form from this highly credible, confidential human source, according to U.S. Attorney Scott Brady.
James Comer, you have talked a lot about these shell corporations, some 20 of them, or however many you might be up to now. You talked about 10 Biden family members you've identified as getting paid. We've talked about Joe's contacts with these foreign business partners and official acts that he took from the FD 1023 form, which gave us the first indication, which led to the whistleblowers. Now we know that there was no ethics deal at all in terms of Hunter having no knowledge of who was buying his art. But according to the art dealer, he knew who 70% of the buyers were. Were they all Democratic donors?
At least 70% were Democrat donors. We're trying to identify the remaining few. But at the end of the day, you'll remember Jen Psaki told everyone after members of the House Oversight Committee demanded that we know who was actually buying the art. She stood up and said that they had ethics rules in place. They had talked to the art dealer. The art dealer testified under oath in our interview. He's never spoken to anyone at the White House, and he didn't know anything about an ethics deal. Another lie from the Biden White House.
All right. We appreciate it. James Comer, Jim Jordan, Jason Smith. Thank you all.